If you insist that the nature which knows and observes and is aware of distinctions is the mind, then apart from all forms, smells, tastes, and touches, apart from the workings of all the defiling objects, that mind should have its own complete nature. And yet now, as you listen to my Dharma, it is because of sound that you are able to make distinctions. Even if you could extinguish all seeing, hearing, awareness, and knowing, and maintain an inner composure, the shadows of your discrimination of dharmas would remain. I do not insist that you grant that it is not the mind. But examine your mind in minute detail, to see whether there is a discriminating nature apart from the objects of sense. That would truly be your mind. If this discriminating nature has no substance apart from objects, then it is shadows of discriminations of objects of mind. The objects are not permanent, and when they pass out of existence, such a mind would be like hair on a tortoise or horns on a rabbit. In that case, your Dharma body would be extinguished along with it. Then who cultivates and attains patience with the non-production of dharmas? At that point Ananda and everyone in the great assembly was speechless and at a total loss. The Buddha said to Ananda, there are cultivators in the world who, although they realize the 9 successive stages of samadhi, do not achieve the extinction of outflows or become arhats, all because they are attached to birth and death false thinking and mistake it for what is truly real. That is why now, although you are greatly learned, you have not realized the accomplishment of sagehood. When Ananda heard that, he again wept sorrowfully, placed his 5 limbs on the ground, knelt on both knees, put his palms together, and said to the Buddha, since I followed the Buddha and left home, what I have done is to rely on the Buddha's awesome spirit. I have often thought, there is no reason for me to toil at cultivation expecting that the Tathagata would bestow samadhi upon me. I never realized that he could not stand in for me in body and mind. Thus, I lost my original mind, and although my body has left the home life, my mind has not entered the way. I am like the poor son who renounced his father and roamed around. Therefore, today I realize that although I am greatly learned, if I do not cultivate, it is the same as if I had not learned anything, just as someone who only speaks of food will never get full. World-honored one, now we all are bound by 2 obstructions, and as a consequence do not perceive the still, eternal nature of the mind. I only hope the Tathagata will take pity on us poor and destitute ones, and disclose the wonderful bright mind, and open my way. Then from the character 1, signifying myriad virtues, on his chest, the Tathagata poured forth precious light. Radiant with hundreds of thousands of colors, the brilliant light simultaneously pervaded everywhere throughout the 10 directions to Buddha realms as many as fine motes of dust, anointing the crowns of every Tathagata in all the jeweled Buddha lands of the 10 directions. Then it swept back to Ananda and all in the great assembly, and said to Ananda, I will now erect the great Dharma banner for you, to cause all living beings in the 10 directions to obtain the wondrous subtle secret, the pure nature, the bright mind, and to attain the pure eye. Ananda, you have told me that you saw my fist of bright light. How did it take the form of a fist? How did the fist become bright? By what means could you see it? Ananda replied, the body of the Buddha is born of purity and cleanness, and, therefore, it assumes the color of Jamba river gold with deep red hues. Hence, it shone as brilliant and dazzling as a precious mountain. It was actually my eyes that saw the Buddha bend his 5-wheeled fingers to form a fist, which was shown to all of us. The Buddha told Ananda, today the Tathagata will tell you truly that all those with wisdom are able to achieve enlightenment through the use of examples. Ananda, take, for example, my fist. If I didn't have a hand, I couldn't make a fist. If you didn't have eyes, you couldn't see. If you apply the example of my fist to the case of your eyes, is the idea the same? Ananda said, yes, world-honored one. Since I can't see without my eyes, if one applies the example of the Buddha's fist to the case of your eyes, the idea is the same. The Buddha said to Ananda, you say it is the same, but that is not right. Why? If a person has no hand, his fist is gone forever. But one who is without eyes is not entirely devoid of sight. For what reason? Try consulting a blind man on the street. What do you see? Any blind man will certainly answer, now I see only black in front of my eyes. Nothing else meets my gaze. The meaning is apparent. If he sees blackness in front of him, how could his seeing be considered lost? Ananda said, the only thing blind people see in front of their eyes is blackness. How can that be seeing? The Buddha said to Ananda, is there any difference between the blackness seen by blind people, who do not have the use of their eyes, and the blackness seen by someone who has the use of his eyes when he is in a dark room? So it is, world-honored one. Between the two kinds of blackness, that seen by the person in a dark room and that seen by the blind, there is no difference. Ananda, if the person without the use of his eyes who sees only blackness were suddenly to regain his sight and see all kinds of forms, and you say it is his eyes which see, then when the person in a dark room who sees only blackness suddenly sees all kinds of forms because a lamp is lit, you should say it is the lamp which sees. If it is a case of the lamp seeing, it would be a lamp endowed with sight, which couldn't be called a lamp. And if the lamp were to do the seeing, how would you be involved? Therefore you should know that while the lamp can reveal the forms, it is the eyes, not the lamp, that do the seeing. And while the eyes can reveal the forms, the seeing nature comes from the mind, not the eyes. Although Ananda and everyone in the great assembly had heard what was said, their minds had not yet understood, and so they remained silent. Hoping to hear more of the gentle sounds of the Tathagata's teaching, they put their palms together, purified their minds, and stood waiting for the Tathagata's compassionate instruction. Then the world-honored one extended his tula cotton-webbed bright hand, opened his 5-wheeled fingers, and told Ananda and the great assembly, when I first accomplished the way I went to the deer park, and for the sake of Ajnata Kondinya and all 5 of the bhikshus, as well as for you of the fourfold assembly, I said, it is because living beings are impeded by guest dust and affliction that they do not realize Bodhi or become arhats. At that time, what caused you who have now realized the holy fruit to become enlightened? Then Ajnata Kondinya arose and said to the Buddha, of the elders now present in the great assembly, only I received the name understanding because I was enlightened to the meaning of the word guest dust and realized the fruition. World-honored one, it is like a traveler who stops as a guest at a roadside inn, perhaps for the night or perhaps for a meal. When he has finished lodging there or when the meal is finished, he packs his baggage and sets out again. He does not remain there at leisure. The host himself, however, does not go far away. Considering it this way, the one who does not remain is called the guest, and the one who does remain is called the host. The word guest, then, means one who does not remain. Again, when the sky clears up, the morning sun rises with all resplendence, and its golden rays stream into a house through a crevice to reveal particles of dust in the air. The dust dances in the rays of light, but the empty space is motionless. Considering it this way, what is clear and still is called space, and what moves is called dust. The word dust, then, means that which moves. The Buddha said, so it is. Then in the midst of the great assembly, the thus come one bent his 5-wheeled fingers. After bending them, he opened them again. After he opened them, he bent them again, and he asked Ananda, what do you see now? Ananda said, I see the thus come one's 100 jeweled wheeled palms opening and closing in the midst of the assembly. The Buddha said to Ananda, you see my hand open and close in the assembly. Is it my hand that opens and closes, or is it your seeing that opens and closes? Ananda said, the world-honored one's jeweled hand opened and closed in the assembly. I saw the thus come one's hand itself open and close. It was not my seeing nature that opened and closed. The Buddha said, what moves and what is still? Ananda said, the Buddha's hand does not remain at rest. And since my seeing nature is beyond even stillness, how could it not be at rest? The Buddha said, so it is. Then from his wheeled palm, the thus come one sent a precious ray of light flying to Ananda's right. Ananda immediately turned his head and glanced to the right. He then sent another ray of light to Ananda's left. Ananda again turned his head and glanced to the left. The Buddha said to Ananda, why did your head move just now? Ananda said, I saw the thus come one emit a wonderful precious light which came by my left and right, and so I looked to the left and right. My head moved of itself. Ananda, when you glanced at the Buddha's light and moved your head to the left and right, was it your head that moved or your seeing that moved?